A midsummer's night on the edge of a small town called Cabello, New Mexico. The still waters of Skinwalker Lake stretched out before them, dark and endless beneath the fading light. Jason gripped the oars of their small boat, the rhythmic splash of water the only sound cutting through the eerie silence. Beside him, Ryan stared out toward the distant island, its dense tree line a jagged silhouette against the twilight. Aaron sat on the back, tapping his fingers against a cooler packed with just enough beer to last the weekend. "This place is creepy as hell," Ryan muttered, adjusting his life vest. Jason smirked. "That's what makes it fun." The boat glided onto the shore of the island, its pebbled beach crunching underfoot as they stepped out. Towering pines loomed overhead, their branches swaying slightly despite the absence of wind. They moved quickly, setting up camp in the clearing at the center of the island, pitching tents beneath the ghostly glow of a rising moon. By the time the fire crackled to life, the scent of charred wood and roasting meat filled the air. They ate in easy silence, the occasional laugh cutting through the night as they passed around stories of past trips. The lake, stretching out in every direction, seemed to swallow the sound. Finally, as the flames danced in the fire pit, Jason leaned back in his chair and cracked open a cold beer. The others followed suit, the familiar hiss of cans breaking the eerie stillness. "To a weekend away from it all," Aaron said, raising his drink. "To Skinwalker Lake," Jason added with a grin. Somewhere beyond the trees, deep in the shadows, something moved. Jason had noticed it, but kept it to himself. The weekend had only just begun. The lake was still that night, its surface like polished obsidian beneath the full moon. 3 firewood trips, 2 hours, 1 case of beer later. Jason and his friends had been drinking, laughing, and swapping stories about the town's old ghost tales. One in particular, Aaron brought up, gave Jason a strange feeling. The story of a drowned woman. It was the only story that was true. A woman had fallen from a boat and was never found. Some said she was sucked down by an underlying current. Others swore her body was taken by something lurking in the lake's depths. The eerie part. People still claimed to see her reflection in the water, even when no one was there. They had all heard the stories growing up. At first, no one believed the stories. Tales of a ghostly woman in the water had been passed down for years, always vague, always twisted, with each telling. "Just another local legend," Jason remarked. Meant to spook kids away from the lake at night. But as they sat around the crackling fire, the conversation took a turn. "I used to think it was all made up too," Ryan muttered, his voice quieter than usual. He poked at the fire with a stick, watching the embers drift into the dark, and the flakes of ash float into the warm glow of the flames. "I've seen her." The group fell silent. Even the night seemed to hush around them. Ryan swallowed hard before continuing. "It was last summer. I was out on the lake with my uncle, just after sunset. We were fishing, but the water had this..." His eyes flickered toward the black expanse of lake behind them. She was barely above the surface, her long, pale arms moving just under the water. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, until she turned her head. A shiver ran through Jason as Ryan's voice dropped lower. Her face was all wrong. Hollow eyes. They weren't seeing me, but they knew I was there. And her mouth. He shook his head, as if trying to shake the memory loose. It opened. She was screaming. No sound came out. Then, just like that, she was gone. No ripples, no bubbles, just gone. The fire crackled loudly, making everyone jump. "You're messing with us," Aaron scoffed. though his voice wasn't as steady as he wanted it to be. Ryan didn't argue. He just stared into the fire. "Believe what you want," he said, "but don't let the lake fool you. It's never as empty as it looks." And as the group looked out over the waters, they were all connecting the dots in their head, remembering the portion of last summer. Ryan said he was sick from catching a cold after night fishing with his uncle, and he was sick until the first day of school. Jason dismissed it as nonsense, but as an icy wind blew over the lake island, an uneasy silence settled over the group. The wind had died. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of the water and the occasional hoot of an owl from the distant shore. Then came the whisper. It was soft, almost mistaken for the breeze, but it was unmistakably a voice that sounded exactly like Ryan. "I've seen her." Jason snapped his head toward the sound. "Did you guys hear that?" No one responded, but their eyes were wide, scanning the dark trees. A sudden crunching of sticks in the brush behind them made everyone jump. Jason spun around, his flashlight beam cutting through the mist. Nothing. Another stick broke. Then a sudden gust of cold, whipping wind extinguished their fire, and without a single word, the three of them turned toe and ran straight for their boat. Reaching the shore first, Ryan and Aaron clumsily climbed in. As Jason caught up, he pushed the boat offshore and jumped in on top of them. Then he saw a ripple moving steadily toward their boat. The air grew colder, and an overwhelming sense of dread settled in his chest. "Let's get out of here," Jason muttered. But the motor refused to start. Jason yanked the cord again and again, nothing but silence and the growing, unnatural chill. Then, from the edge of the boat, a pale, waterlogged hand emerged, fingers gripping the side. A gasp choked in Jason's throat as another hand appeared, then a head, long, tangled hair covering a face that wasn't there. The figure pulled itself up, water pouring off its rotten form. Its hollow sockets locked onto Jason's, and he felt something cold wrap around his leg, with a sensation like electricity or a magnetic force ripping his skin as it gripped tightly and pulled. The last thing he heard before the world turned to darkness was the whisper again, clearer this time, and in a distorted voice, as icy water filled his lungs.
"Your friend has seen her, but it was I watching from beneath, smelling him with her nose. The scent laced in the winds this night is the smell of my spores evaporating from your sweat. You will be made to see."
Jason awoke with a violent gasp, coughing up water and shivering uncontrollably. He was no longer on the boat, sprawled on the rocky shore. But something had changed inside of Jason. His friends huddled together nearby, their faces pale and drawn. Moments after Jason was ripped from the boat, Ryan was hit with a wave of adrenaline at the sight of his friend being dragged under the water, and all fears slipped away, replaced with a newfound determination to save his friend or die trying. In an instant he stood, grabbing the boat rope and diving straight into the water after Jason. Aaron had managed to drag them back at the last second. The next few days were a blur. Jason's sleep was haunted by dreams of the voice, the fuzzy distortion to it, and the faceless visage always appearing beneath the water's surface, watching, waiting. He found himself drawn back to the lake, unable to shake the feeling that something was unfinished. One night, against his better judgment, Jason returned alone. The lake was calm, almost inviting. He froze at the docks and couldn't move. He felt like a bot, not functioning under his own control, yet feeling no objection to his actions, only a subtle awareness to it, scrambled by the current of control wired through him by whatever is conducting him. He took a small rowboat and paddled to the center, the moon casting an eerie glow on the water, as always. Then he peered down, half expecting to see his own reflection staring back. Instead, the water rippled, revealing the vague outline of a figure beneath him. A sudden force pulled at the boat, rocking it violently. Jason snapped out of his trance, and his breath hitched as a whisper so close it felt like it was inside his head chilled his spine.
Soon you will see.
Jason screamed as the boat capsized, plunging him into the icy abyss. The last thing he saw was her hands reaching for him. Then the body of the drowned woman was jerked away, as if tethered to something larger, something unseen, then replaced by two massive glowing yellow eyes, as Jason's body was pulled down deeper into the darkness. Jason's first breath was a struggle, a violent gasp that filled his lungs with damp, heavy air. He coughed, choking on the earthy scent of wet wood and decay. His body ached, cold and stiff, as if he had been lying there for hours. Panic clawed at his chest as he sat up, his hands sinking into a thick layer of logs and mud. He wasn't in his bed. He wasn't anywhere he recognized. The chamber around him was vast, a labyrinth of tunnels and hollowed-out wooden caverns, reinforced by an intricate weave of branches. The walls glistened with the moisture, reflecting the faint glow of bioluminescent fungi that pulsed with a sickly green light. Water dripped from above, creating a rhythmic sound that echoed through the den. It was a beaver lodge, only impossibly large, twisted, and ancient beyond comprehension. Jason turned his head sharply at the sound of soft whimpering. His breath caught in his throat. Just a few feet away, nestled in a bed of moss and shredded bark, was a newborn baby. It squirmed, its tiny fists clenching as it let out another fragile cry. Jason felt his heart lurch. How did a baby get down here? The thought barely had time to register before a slow, paralyzing dread set in. Something about the child was wrong. Its limbs twitched unnaturally, its fingers curling with a boneless fluidity that no human should possess. Its skin rippled, shifting, as if something beneath it was adjusting, setting into place. Then, with an almost leisurely pace, its face began to change. Jason scrambled backward, his pulse hammering in his ears. The baby's features warped, stretching and twisting into something monstrous. Its eyes yellow at first, then black as the starless void, locked onto his. A mouth far too wide to belong to an infant, curled into a grin.
It was, is, and you will be too.
It whispered. The voice was layered, wrong, both human and something else entirely. The words slithered into Jason's mind, burrowing deep. A sudden wave of nausea overtook him. His vision blurred, his limbs trembled. He clutched his head as his thoughts fractured, shifting into something unfamiliar. Memories that weren't his flooded in deep, insatiable hunger. The feeling of damp earth beneath clawed hands, the thrill of the hunt beneath a full moon. The creature before him was no longer a baby. It's too tall, its form fluid, shifting, its grin ever present. It reached out, placing a hand over Jason's chest. A burning heat spread through him, burning his veins like liquid fire. His body convulsed, but he couldn't scream. The world tilted, the den pulsing as if alive. He could hear whispers now, dozens of voices beckoning, welcoming. The thing spoke in a strange, hoarse voice, its words like whispers of wind.
You think you're alone in that body, don't you? But you're already part of something older than your bones. The roots, the spores, the whispers beneath your feet. They all know you. They know what you can be. Most flesh breaks down under my touch, but yours is special. I don't take, I complete.
Jason's breath came ragged and shallow. His skin itched, stretched. The sensation was unbearable, like something beneath it was pulsing outward. He clenched his fists, sharp nails digging into his palms. The thing that had once been a baby stepped back, its smile widening in approval. Jason's reflection flickered in the dark waters pulling beneath his feet, but the face staring back at him wasn't right. It morphed and changed, like a holographic image, his cells shifting like pixels. To be continued. Find out in the next video coming soon why Jason was chosen, how tight-knit his friends really are, and most interestingly of all, get a take on the origin of skinwalkers, how they shapeshift, and what their purpose is that most never assumed they had at all. And if there's any part of the story you find particularly interesting, or you have a suggestion about where you'd like the story to go, please comment below and I'll be sure to edit it into the next chapter, as these stories are written by yours truly. Thanks for listening. If you're hooked on this story, cast a like and subscription here to reel in the next one and catch the full series. Until next time, I hope you enjoy this spring weather. And remember, the lake is never as empty as it looks.